Okay, hello everyone. Welcome. This story about not giving unsolicited advice to anybody, it annoys people, is one little essay written in the year 1900 by Jerome K. Jerome. The little book is called The Second Thoughts of an Idle Fellow. And this one is on people who go around giving advice. I was pacing the Euston platform late one winter's night, waiting for the last train to Watford, when I noticed a man cursing an automatic machine. So, 1900, automatic vending machines, I didn't know. Well, twice he shook his fist at it. I expected every moment to see him strike it. Naturally curious, I drew near softly. I wanted to catch what he was saying. However, he heard my approaching footsteps and turned on me. "Are you the man," said he, who was here just now?" "Just where?" I replied. I had been pacing up and down the platform for about 5 minutes. "Why, here, where we are standing," he said. "Where do you think here is? Over there?" Seemed irritable. "I may have passed this spot in the course of my peregrinations, if that is what you mean," I replied. I spoke with studied politeness. My idea was to rebuke his rudeness. "I mean," he answered, "are you the man that spoke to me just a minute ago?" "I am not that man," I said. "Good night." "Are you sure?" he persisted. "One is not likely to forget talking to you," I retorted. His tone had been most offensive. Then he changed. "I beg your pardon," he replied grudgingly. "I thought you looked like the man who spoke to me a minute or so ago." Well, I felt mollified. He was the only other man on the platform, and I still had a quarter of an hour to go. So I said, "No, it certainly wasn't me," I returned genially but ungrammatically. "Why, did you want him?" "Yes, I did," he answered. I put a penny in this slot here," he continued telling me. Apparently he had the need to underburden himself. "I put a penny here, and I wanted a box of matches, you see. I couldn't get anything out, and I was shaking the machine and swearing at it, as one does, when there came along a man about your size. You're sure it wasn't you?" "Positive," I said ungrammatically. "I would tell you if it had been me." "What did he do?" "Well, he saw what had happened, or guessed it, and he said, 'They're troublesome things, those machines. They want understanding, you see.' And I said, 'They want taking up and flinging them into the sea. That's what they want.' I was feeling mad because I hadn't a match about me, and I use a lot of matches. And he said, 'They stick sometimes, you see. The thing to do is to put another penny in. The weight of the first penny is not always sufficient. The second penny loosens the drawer and tumbles out itself. So you will get your purchase together with the first penny back again. I have often succeeded that way.'" Well, it seemed a silly explanation, but he talked as if he had been weaned by automatic machines. So, even though it was stupid, I listened to him. I dropped in what I thought was another penny, and I have just this minute discovered that it wasn't a penny at all. It was a 2-shilling piece. The fool was right to a certain extent. I did get something back, but this is what I've got. He held it towards me. I looked at it. It was a packet of Everton toffee. 2 and a penny it cost me. I'll sell it for a third of what it cost me." "You have put your money into the wrong slot," I suggested. "Well, I know that." he answered a little crossly, as it seemed to me he was not a very nice man. Had there been anyone else to talk to, I would have left him. But it isn't losing the money that I mind so much, he said. It's getting this damn thing that annoys me. If I could find that idiot, I'd ram the toffee down his throat. He walked to the end of the platform, and I alongside with him in silence. There are people like that, he broke out as we turned the corner. People who will go about giving advice. I wouldn't mind getting 6 months in jail over one of them. I remember a pony I had once, he added. I thought that he looked like a small farmer. It was, and he told me the story, it was a thoroughbred Welsh pony, as sound a little beast as ever stepped. I had him out to grass all winter, and one day in the early spring I thought I'd take him for a run. I had to go to Amersham on business. I put him in the cart and drove him across. It is just 10 miles from my place. He was a bit uppish and had lathered himself pretty freely by the time we reached the town. A man was at the door of the hotel. He says to me, "That's a good pony of yours." "Yes, pretty meddling," I says. "It doesn't do to overdrive 'em when they're young," he says. And I says, "He's done 10 miles. And I've done most of the pulling. I reckon I'm a jolly sight more exhausted than he is." So then I went inside and did my business, and when I came out, the man was still there. "Going back up the hill?" he says to me. Somehow I didn't like him, and I said, "Well, I've got to get over the other side of the hill, so unless you know any obvious way of getting over a hill without getting up it, I reckon I am." And he says to me, "You take my advice. Give the pony a pint of old ale before you start." "Old ale?" I says. "Why, he's a teetotaler." "Never you mind that," he says. "You give him a pint of old ale. I know these ponies. He's a good one, but he ain't set yet. A pint of old ale, and he'll take you up that hill like a cable tramway and not hurt himself." I don't know what it is about this class of men. One asks oneself afterwards why White didn't knock his hat over his eyes and run his head into the nearest horse trough. But at the time one listens to them. So I don't know why I got a pint of old ale in a hand bowl and brought it out. And there were about 6 chaps there standing around, and of course there was a good deal of laughing at me and a good deal of chaff. One of them said, "You're starting him on the downward spiral, Jim. Next he'll take to gambling, rob a bank, and murder his mother. That's always the result of a glass of ale, according to the scriptures." Another one said, "He won't drink it like that. It's as flat as ditch water. Put a little bit of a head on the ale for him." Yet another one said, "Ain't you going to give him a cigar as well?" And then a fourth, "No, a cup of coffee and a round of buttered toast would do him a sight more good a cold day like this." I'd have half a mind then to throw the stuff away or even drink it myself. It seemed a piece of bally nonsense giving good ale to a 4-year-old pony. But the moment the bugger smelled the bowl, he reached out his head and lapped it up as though he had been a Christian. And I jumped into the cart and started off amid cheers and clapping from everybody. We got up the hill pretty steady. But then the liquor began to work into his head. I've taken home a drunken man more than once, and there is pleasanter jobs than that. I've even seen a drunken woman, and they're worse. But a drunken Welsh pony, I never want to have anything more to do with so long as I live. Having 4 legs, he managed to hold himself up. But as to guiding himself, he couldn't. And as for letting me do it, he wouldn't. First, we were on one side of the road, and then we were on the other side of the road, and when we were not on either side, we were crossways in the middle of the road. And I heard a bicycle bell behind me, but I dare not turn my head. All I could do was to shout to the fellow to keep where he was. "But I want to pass you," he cried out, so soon as he was near enough. "Well, you can't do it. You can't pass me," I called back. "Why can't I?" he answered. "How much of the road do you want?" "All of it, and a bit over," I answered him, for his job and nothing in the way. He followed me for about half a mile, abusing me all the time, and every time he thought he saw a chance, he tried to pass me. But the pony was always a bit too smart for him. You might have thought the brute was doing it on purpose. "You're not fit to be driving," he shouted. He was quite right. I wasn't. I was feeling just about dead beat. "What do you think you are?" he continued. "The charge of the Light Brigade?" He was a common sort of fellow. "Who sent you home with the washing then?" Well, he was making me wild by this time. "What's the good of talking to me?" I shouted back. "Come and blackguard the pony if you want to blackguard anybody. I've got all I can do without the help of that alarm clock of yours. Go away. You're only making him worse." "What's the matter with the pony then?" he called out. "Can't you see?" I answered. "He's drunk." Well, of course, it sounded foolish. The truth always does. "One of you is drunk, all right," he retorted. "For 2 pins I'd come and haul you out of the cart." I wish to goodness he had. I'd have given something to be out of the cart myself. But he didn't have the chance. At that moment the pony gave a sudden swerve, and I take it he must have been a little bit too close. I heard a yell and a curse, and at the same instant I was splashed from head to foot with ditch water. And then the brute bolted. A man was coming along, asleep on the top of a cartload of Windsor chairs. It's disgraceful the way these wagoners go to sleep. I wonder why there aren't any more accidents. I don't think he ever knew what had happened to him. I couldn't look round to see what became of him. I only saw him start. Halfway down the hill, a policeman hollered to me to stop. I heard him shouting out something about furious driving. Half a mile this side of Chesham, we came upon a girls' school walking 2 and 2, a crocodile they call it, I think. I bet you those girls are still talking about it. It must have taken the old woman a good hour to collect them together again. We got to Chesham. It was market day, and I guess there has not been a busier market day in Chesham before or since. We went through the town at about 30 miles an hour. I have never seen Chesham so lively. It's Sleepy Hole as a rule. A mile outside the town, I saw the High Wycombe coach. I didn't feel I minded much by the time I had got to the pass, when it didn't really matter to me what happened. I only felt curious. A dozen yards off the coach, the pony stopped dead. That jerked me off the seat to the bottom of the cart. I couldn't get up because the seat was on top of me. I could see nothing but the sky and occasionally the head of the pony when he stood upon his hind legs. But I could hear what the driver of the coach said, and I judged he was having trouble also. "Take that damn circus of a pony out of the road," he shouted. If he'd had any sense, he'd have seen how helpless I was. I could hear his cattle plunging about. They are like that, horses. If they see one fool, then they all want to be fools. "Take it home and tie it up to its organ," shouted the guard. Then an old woman went into hysterics and began laughing like a hyena. That started the pony off again, and as far as I could calculate by watching the clouds, we did about another 4 miles at the gallop. And then he thought he tried to jump a gate, and finding, I suppose, that the cart hampered him, he started kicking it to pieces. I've never had thought a cart could have been separated into so many pieces if I hadn't seen it done. When he had got rid of everything but half a wheel and the splashboard, he bolted again. I remained behind with the other ruins, and glad I was to get a little rest at last. He came back later in the afternoon, and I was pleased to sell him the next week for a £5 note. And it cost me about another 10 to repair myself. To this day I am chuffed about that pony, and the local temperance society made a lecture out of me. That's what comes of following advice. I sympathized with him and his story. I had suffered from advice myself. I have a friend, a man in the city, a city man whom I meet occasionally. One of his most ardent passions in life is to make my fortune. He buttonholes me in Threadneedle Street, "the very man I wanted to see," he always says. "I'm going to let you in for a good thing. We are getting up a little syndicate here." He's forever getting up a little syndicate, and for every £100 you put into it, you take 1,000 out. Had I gone into all his little syndicates, I could have been worth at the present moment, I reckon, £2,500,000. But I have not got into all his little syndicates. I went into one years ago, when I was younger, and I'm still in it. And my friend is still confident that my holding later on in the future the fullness of time will yield me thousands. Being, however, hard up for ready money, I am willing to part with this holding of mine and this share to any deserving person at a genuine reduction, if it is cash. And another friend of mine knows another man who is in the know as regards racing matters. I suppose most people possess a friend of this type. He's generally very popular just before a race, and extremely unpopular immediately afterwards. A third benefactor of mine is an enthusiast upon the subject of dieting. One day he brought me something in a packet and pressed it into my hand with the air of a man who is relieving you of all your troubles. "What is it?" I asked. "Open and see it," he answered, in the tone of a pantomime fairy. I opened it and looked, but I was no wiser. "It's tea," he explained. "Oh," I replied, "I was wondering if it could be snuff." "Well, it's not exactly tea," he continued. "It's a sort of tea. You take 1 cup of that, 1 cup, and you will never care for any other kind of tea again." He was quite right. I took 1 cup. After drinking it, I felt I didn't care for any other tea. I felt I didn't care for anything except to die quietly and inoffensively. He called on me a week later. "You remember that tea I gave you?" "Distinctly," I answered. "I've got the taste of it in my mouth still." "Oh, did it upset you?" It annoyed me at the time, I answered, but don't worry, it's all over now. He seemed thoughtful. You were quite correct, he answered. It was snuff, a very special snuff, sent me all the way from India. I can't say I liked it much, I replied. Stupid mistake of mine, he went on. I must have mixed up the packets. Oh, accidents will happen, I said, and you won't make another mistake, I feel sure, so far as I'm concerned. We can all give advice. I had the honor once of serving an old gentleman whose profession it was to give legal advice himself, and excellent legal advice he always gave. In common with most men who know the law and practice the law, he had very little respect for it. I have heard him say to a would-be litigant one time, "My dear sir, if a villain stopped me in the street and demanded of me my watch and chain, I would refuse to give it to him, and if he then said, 'Then I shall take it from you by brute force,' I should, old as I am and feel convinced, I would reply to him, 'Well, come on.' But if, on the other hand, he were to say to me, after I refuse, 'Very well, then I shall take proceedings against you in the court of the Queen's Bench to compel you to give it to me,' then I should at once take it from my pocket, press it into his hand, and beg of him to say no more about the matter, and I should consider I was getting off cheaply. Yet that same old gentleman went to law himself with his next-door neighbor over a dead-poll parrot that wasn't worth sixpence to anybody, and spent from first to last £100, if he spent a penny. I know I'm a fool, he confessed. I have no positive proof that it was his cat, but I'll make him pay for calling me an Old Bailey attorney. Hang if I don't. We all know how the pudding ought to be made. What we do not profess to be able to make it, That is not our business. Our business is to criticize the cook. It seems our business is to criticize so many things that it is not our business to do. We are all critics nowadays. I have my opinion of you, reader, and you possibly have your own opinion of me. I do not seek to know it. Personally, I prefer the man who says what he has to say of me behind my back, actually. I remember when on a lecturing tour, the ground plan of the hall often necessitated my mingling with the audience as they streamed out. This never happened, but I would overhear somebody in front of me whisper to his or her companion, "Take care, he's just behind you." I always felt so grateful to that whisperer. At a bohemian club, I was once drinking coffee with a novelist who happened to be a broad-shouldered, athletic man. A fellow member joining us said to the novelist, "I have just finished that last book of yours. I'll tell you my candid opinion of it." Promptly, the novelist replied, "I give you fair warning. If you do, I shall punch you on your head." We never heard that candid opinion. Most of our leisure time we spend sneering at one another. It is a wonder, going about as we do with our noses so high in the air, that we do not walk off this little round world into space, all of us. The masses sneer at the classes. The morals of the classes are shocking. If only the classes would consent as a body to be taught behavior by a committee of the masses, how very much better it would be for them. If only the classes would neglect their own interests a little bit and devote themselves to the welfare of the masses a little bit, the masses would be much more pleased with them. But then the classes sneer at the masses. If only the masses would follow the advice given to them by the classes. If only they would be thrifty on their 10 shillings a week. If only they would be all teetotalers or drink old claret, which is not so intoxicating. If only all the girls would be domestic servants on £5 a year and not waste their money on feathers. If only the men would be content to work for 14 hours a day and to sing in tune "God bless the squire and his relations," and would consent to be kept in their proper stations, all things would go swimmingly for the classes. The new woman pooh-poohs the old woman. The old woman is indignant with the new woman. The chapel denounces the stage ridicules Little Bethel. The minor poet sneers at the world laughs at the minor poet. Man criticizes woman. We are not altogether pleased with woman. We discuss her shortcomings. We advise her for her good. If only English wives would dress as French wives, talk as American wives, cook as German wives. If only women would be precisely what we want them to be, patient and hard-working, brilliantly witty and exhaustively domestic, bewitching, amenable and less suspicious. How very much better it would be for them, also for us. We work so hard to teach them, but they will not listen. Instead of paying attention to our wise counsel, the tiresome creatures are wasting their time criticizing us. It is a popular game, this game of school. All that is needed is a doorstep, a cane, and 6 other children. The difficulty is the 6 other children. Every child wants to be a schoolmaster. They will keep jumping up saying that it is their turn. And woman wants to take the stick now and put man on the doorstep. There are 1 or 2 things she has got to say to him. He is not at all the man she approves of. He must begin by getting rid of all his natural desires and propensities. That's number 1. That done, she will take him in the hand and make of him not a man, but something very much superior. It would be the best of all possible worlds if everyone would only follow our advice. I wonder would Jerusalem have been the cleanly city it is reported if, instead of troubling himself concerning his own 2-penny halfpenny doorstep, each citizen had gone out into the road and given eloquent lectures to all the other inhabitants on the subject of sanitation. We have even taken to criticizing the Creator himself of late. The world is wrong. We are wrong. If only He, God, had taken our advice during those first 6 days. Why do I seem to have scooped out and filled up with lead? Why do I hate the smell of bacon and feel that nobody cares for me? It is because champagne and lobsters have been made wrong. Why do Edwin and Angelina quarrel? It is because Edwin has been given a fine, high-spirited nature that will not brook contradiction, while Angelina, poor girl, has been cursed with contradictory instincts. Why is excellent Mr. Jones brought down next door to beggary? Mr. Jones had an income of 1,000 a year, secured by the funds. But there came along a wicked company promoter. Why are wicked company promoters permitted? So he came with a prospectus telling good Mr. Jones how to obtain 100% for his money by investing it in some scheme for the swindling of Mr. Jones's fellow citizens. The scheme does not succeed. The people swindled turn out, contrary to the promise of the prospectus, to be Mr. Jones and his fellow investors. Why does heaven allow these wrongs? Why does Mrs. Brown leave her husband and children to run off with the new doctor in town? It is because an ill-advised creator has given Mrs. Brown and the new doctor unduly strong emotions. Neither Mrs. Brown nor the new doctor are to be blamed now. If any human being be answerable, it is probably Mrs. Brown's grandfather or some early ancestor of the new doctor's. We shall criticize heaven when we get there. I doubt if any of us will be pleased with the arrangements. We have grown so exceedingly critical. It was once said of a very superior young man that he seemed to be under the impression that God Almighty had made the universe chiefly to hear what he would say about it. Consciously or unconsciously, most of us are of this way of thinking. It is an age of mutual improvement societies, a delightful idea, everyone's business being to improve everybody else's business, of amateur parliaments, of literary councils, of playgoers' clubs. The first-night criticism seems to have died out of late, the student of the drama having come to the conclusion, possibly, that plays are not worth criticizing. But in my young days it was different. We were very earnest at this work. We went to a play, less with the selfish desire to enjoy our evening, but with the noble aim of elevating the stage. Maybe we did good, maybe we were needed, let us think so. Certain it is, many of the old absurdities have disappeared from the theatre, and our rough and ready criticism may have helped the happy dispatch. A folly is often served by an unwise remedy. The dramatist in those days and the actors had to reckon with their audience. Gallery and pit took an interest in his work, such as the galleries and pits no longer take. I recollect witnessing the production of a very blood-curdling melodrama at, I think, the Old Queen's Theatre. The heroine had been given by the author a quite unnecessary amount of conversation, so we considered. The woman, whenever she appeared on the stage, talked and talked and talked by the yard. She could not do a simple little thing like cursing the villain under 20 lines. When the hero asked her if she loved him, she stood up and made a speech about it that lasted 3 minutes by the watch. One dreaded to see her open her mouth. In the third act, somebody got hold of her and shut her up in a dungeon. He was not a nice man, speaking generally, but we felt that he was the man for the situation, and the house cheered him to the echo. We flattered ourselves that we had got rid of her for the rest of the evening, thank God. Then some fool of a turnkey came along, and she appealed to him through the grating of the door to let her out for a few minutes. The turnkey, a good but soft-hearted man, hesitated. "Don't you do it," shouted one earnest student of the drama from the gallery. "She's all right there. Keep her there." The old idiot paid no attention to our advice. He argued the matter to himself. "'Tis but a trifling request," he remarked, "and it will make her happy." Yes, but what about us? Replied the same voice from the gallery. You don't know her. You've only just come on. We've been listening to her all evening. She's quiet now. Let her be. Oh, let me out, if only for one moment, shrieked the poor woman. I have something that I must say to my child. Well, write it on a bit of paper and pass it. We'll pass it out, suggested a voice from the pit. We'll see that he gets it. Shall I keep a mother from her dying child? Mused the turnkey. No, it would be inhuman. No, it wouldn't, persisted the voice of the pit. Not in this instance. It's too much talk that has made the poor child ill. The turnkey would not be guided by us. He opened the cell door amidst the execrations of the whole house. She talked to her child for about 5 minutes, at the end of which time it died. Ah, he's dead, shrieked the distressed parent. Lucky bugger, was the unsympathetic rejoinder of the house. Sometimes the criticism of the audience would take the form of remarks addressed by one gentleman to another in the audience. We had been listening one night to a play in which action seemed to be unnecessarily subordinated to dialogue, and somewhat poor dialogue at that. And suddenly, across the whirring talk from the stage came this whisper. Jim! Hello? Wake me up when the play begins. This is where the play is going on. And this was followed by an ostentatious sound as of snoring. And then the voice of the second speaker was heard. Sammy! His friend appeared to awake. Yes, what's up? Has anything happened in the play? Wake you up at 11:30 in any event when it's over, I suppose. Thanks, do, sonny. And the critic slept again. Those were the days. Yes, we took an interest in our plays then. I wonder, shall I ever enjoy the British drama again as I enjoyed it in those days? Shall I ever enjoy a supper again as I enjoyed the tripe and onions washed down with bitter beer at the bar of the old Albion? I have tried many suppers after the theatre since then, and some, when friends have been in a generous mood, have been expensive and elaborate. The cook may have come from Paris. His portrait may be in the illustrated papers. His salary may be reckoned by hundreds. But there is something wrong with his art, for all that. I miss a flavor in his meats. There is a sauce lacking. Nature has her own coinage and demands payment in her own currency. And at nature's shop, it is you yourself that must pay. Your unearned income, your inherited fortune, your luck are not legal tenders across her counter. You want a good appetite? Nature is quite willing to supply you it. Certainly, sir, she replies. I can do you a very excellent article indeed. I have here a real, genuine hunger and thirst that will make your meal a delight to you. You shall eat heartily and with zest, and you shall rise from the table refreshed, invigorated, and cheerful. Just the very thing I want, exclaims the gourmet delightedly. Tell me the price. The price, answers Mrs. Nature, is one long day's hard work. And the customer's face falls. He handles nervously his heavy purse. Cannot I pay for it in money, in my own money? He asks. I don't like work, But I am a rich man. I can afford to keep French cooks, to purchase old wines. Nature shakes her head. I cannot take your checks. Tissue and nerve are my charges. For these I can give you an appetite that will make a rump steak and a tankard of ale more delicious to you than any dinner that the greatest chef in Europe could put before you. I can even promise you that a hunk of bread and cheese shall be a banquet to you. But you must pay my price in my money. I do not deal in yours. And next, the dilettante student enters, demanding a taste for art and literature, and this also nature is quite prepared to supply. I can give you true delight in all these things, she answers. Music shall be as wings to you, lifting you above the turmoil of the world. Through art you shall catch a glimpse of truth. Along the pleasant paths of literature you shall walk as beside still waters. And your charge? Cries the delighted customer. These things are somewhat expensive, replies nature. I want from you a life lived simply, free from all desire of worldly success, a life from which passion has been lived out, a life to which appetites have been subdued. But you make a mistake, my dear lady, replies the dilettante. I have many friends possessed of taste, and they are men who do not pay this price for it. Their houses are full of beautiful pictures. They rave about nocturnes and symphonies. Their shelves are packed with first editions. Yet they are men of luxury and wealth and fashion. They trouble much concerning the making of money and society as they are having. Cannot I be as one of these? I do not deal in the tricks of apes, answers nature coldly. The culture of these friends of yours is a mere pose, a fashion of the hour, their talk mere parrot chatter. Yes, you can purchase such culture as this, and pretty cheaply, but a passion for skittles would be of more service to you and bring you more genuine enjoyment. My goods are of a different class. I fear we waste each other's time. And next comes the boy in love, asking with a blush for love, and nature's motherly old heart goes out to him, for it is an article she loves to sell, and she loves those who come to purchase it of her. So she leans across the counter, smiling, and tells him that she has the very thing he wants, and he, trembling with excitement, likewise asks the figure. It costs a good deal, explains nature, but in no way in a discouraging tone. It is the most expensive thing in all my shop. I am rich, replies the lad. My father worked hard and saved, and he has left me all his wealth. I have stocks and shares and lands and factories, and I will pay any price in reason for this thing, love. But nature, looking graver, lays her hand upon his arm. Put by your purse, my boy, she says. My price is not a price in reason, nor is gold the metal that I deal in. There are many shops in various streets where your banknotes will be accepted, but if you will take an old woman's advice, you will not go to them. The thing that they will sell you will bring sorrow and do evil to you. It is cheap enough, but like all things cheap, it is not worth the buying. No man purchases it, only the fool. And what is the cost of the things that you sell, then? Asked the lad. self-forgetfulness, tenderness, strength, answers the old dame, the love of all things that are of good repute, the hate of all things evil, courage, sympathy, self-respect, these things purchase love. Put by your purse, lad. It will serve you in other ways, but it will not buy for you the goods upon my shelves. Then I am no better off than a poor man, demands the lad. I know not wealth or poverty as you understand it, answers nature. Here I exchange realities only for realities. You ask for my treasures. I ask for your brain and heart in exchange. Yours, boy, not your father's, not another's. And this prize, he argues, how shall I obtain it? Go about the world, replies the great lady. Labor, suffer, help. Come back to me when you have earned your wages, and according to how much you bring me, so we will do business. Is real wealth so unevenly distributed as we think? Is not fate the true socialist? Who is the rich man? Who the poor? Do we know? Does even the man himself know? Are we not striving for the shadow, missing the substance? Take life at its highest. Which was the happier man, rich Solomon or poor Socrates? Solomon seems to have had most things that most men most desire, maybe too much of some for his own comfort. Socrates had little beyond what he carried about with him, but that was a good deal. According to our scales, Solomon should have been one of the happiest men that ever lived, and Socrates one of the most wretched. But was it so? Or taking life at its lowest, with pleasure its own goal? Is my Lord Tom Noddy in the stalls so very much jollier than Ari in the gallery? Were beer 10 shillings the bottle and champagne 4p a quart, which, think you, we should clamour for? In every West End club had its skittle alley, and billiards could only be played in East End pubs. Which pub, my lord, would you select? Is the air of Berkeley Square so much more joy-giving than the atmosphere of Seven Dials? I find myself a piquancy in the air of Seven Dials, missing from Berkeley Square. Is there so vast a difference between horsehair and straw when you are tired? Is happiness multiplied by the number of rooms in one's house? Are Lady Ermintrude's lips so very much sweeter than Sally of the alley? What is success in life? End of story. Jerome K. Jerome, 1900. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.